The Major League Baseball season is a marathon, not a sprint. But don't tell us Pirates fans that because we react with every single game, sometimes with every single pitch, every single misstep. And yeah, even though the Pirates won tonight, recording a day early here with Bucks in the basement, I can't blame them at times, but other times I feel like we get impressions of players and different things in our heads that we don't want to let go. We're all human. We're going to talk about that all tonight. But first off, Scott, how you doing today, brother?
Making it through. This has been a couple of heartbreakers in New York. It's when you think that there's new energy and you see, players maybe turning a corner. Then you have a couple of games and you realize, oh, yeah, this is still the 2025 Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, and that this is like crazy things again. Is I think we talk about this like almost every series, and we don't like to like try to pinpoint on series, but I mean, this has been like Groundhog Day. It's been crazy things where you look at okay, who's pitching and who's pitching against who, and you basically think, okay, if I told you Skenes went out and did what he did, what Keller did and went out and did what he did, and that Bailey Falter was, pulled without even qualifying for the win, pulled before the 5 innings, and this would be the game that we would win. Yeah, I would just basically told you you're crazy. If you told me he was pulled before the 5th inning, I'd be like, oh man, then that's definitely going to be a game that you're losing. And I mean, Mitch Keller coming out pitching a masterpiece, looking like the Mitch Keller of the beginning of last season, I believe it was. No, 2 seasons ago, before he kind of hit like a kind of a bump in the middle of the road. But yeah, I mean, it's very predictable at times as to what's going to happen with this team. It's almost like we can tell the future of when double plays are going to be hit into, um, when missteps are going to be made. I was honestly expecting after Brian Reynolds tried to dive or slide for that ball and it went off of his glove, that was going to be like the turning point, and that was going to be like, okay, now all of a sudden everything is going to go the Mets way, and we're going to be sitting here, not happy tonight like we haven't
Mhm.
been for the last 2 nights. And I mean, I'm still not super happy. I'm happy to the point where whenever the Pirates win, yeah, I do have a little bit more pep in my step, at least for that day. But when you look at the season as a collective, when you look at the stuff that we've had to go through the past 5 years, I don't get as happy. But you can't. I mean, you can't fault some of what's going on with I know that people were picking on Donnie Kelly's lineup the other night, and it was just like making these comments like this is a lineup in year 6 and blah 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 and all that kind of stuff, and rolls out almost the same lineup again, and those calls aren't made, and they probably won't be made the next time because the Pirates won tonight. It's just a very, I guess it's that what have you done for me lately? It's that you can see everything instantaneously on your phone or on your
Mhm.
TV, reacting to it in that instant. And I mean, if people have time to think about certain things, and that's why, like, I mean, I like when news comes out before we record because then, at times there's some things to talk about it, but other times I like to kind of sit in these things almost like, you know, to know what it's going to look like. And I even said, like, I don't know what I'm not going to judge Donnie Kelly on, his first week. It's going to be like a bigger piece. But it kind of seemed like after, Donnie Kelly winning the first series, it was like riding this Donnie high, and are we on the Donnie low now? I don't know how to feel. Like, how am I supposed to feel, Scott?
Well, I think we said ahead of time that he's involved in building these lineups when he was the bench coach. So he had Shelton's ear. He didn't get to make the decision, but he had a say. And I think that he had some stroke. He's the vice president of the team in the dugout when you're the bench coach. You're a sounding board for the manager, so he's just as involved as anybody. So when people were expecting something wildly different with the lineups, you and I spoke, and we were like, "Well, exactly what does he do?" And now you are seeing it getting shaken up a little bit. Reynolds is hitting third now instead of that two hole that he's been in for years. Just trying to get him going, change anything. I do think though that when you look at the big picture of things, and you have Donnie Kelly making his own decisions, I think you're starting to see guys get a little more playing time, a little more run consecutively. They some guys have made some great points about you bring a guy up from AAA because he's hot and you think he can help the team. And like Gorski, he comes up in Anaheim, he hits a home run in his first game. How many games in a row does he sit after that? Play the hot hand. Shelton always had this, was always knocked for making lineups a week in advance or whatever. Uh, see how guys are playing, get your eyes on it, get a feel in mid game. Maybe you make a change, maybe you don't, maybe you stick with the pitcher a little longer. It seemed like Shelton was very rigid in the game planning, very rigid with, okay, this is how many innings we're going to pitch this guy. This is how many batters he's going to face, how many times through the lineup. That was a pretty steady thing. And so with Kelly, it's a little more feel, a little more eye test, and maybe not so much with the analytics.
And with Donnie Kelly, the two things, and we've talked about this on the side and in our texts back and forth to each other and different things is, there are things that he's doing differently. There's kind of some things that he's doing the same. I mean, there was earlier on in the season when people were praising the bullpen for how well it was performing. During that time, we discussed that, Shelton was kind of playing the matchups, playing different types of things. Well, there are times here where we're seeing this where Donnie Kelly is playing the matchups and bringing a guy in to close an inning and then leaving him in because
Hmm.
seeing who is coming up next. So he is doing, some of those same things. We saw it work out tonight with Sugart. The other night we saw it not work out. I mean, the players still have to perform. The manager is going to be the face kind of those decisions, but just like even the reaction from Brownie, from I know it's been some people on like 93.7 The Fan, and that is the flagship station of the Pirates. So in some way, they kind of are linked to the Pirates, but it's like when Donnie Kelly is making, just normal baseball decisions, it's just like, whoa, did you watch what Donnie Kelly did with this team? And and then there's the other side of it, because I guess there's always going to be trolls, or there's always people that aren't going to be happy. They're going to say, "Well, God, why did they make that move to put Adam Frazier first? Like Adam Frazier, look at his numbers for the season." And for some reason, I don't even know why I picked this date. I think it was just kind of based upon like, okay, you're getting into the season a little bit. And it was when they came into the national series. So I looked back. Usually I look in baseball chunks in about a month. So I'm like, okay, let's look at what a month ago was. Adam Frazier, Andrew McCutchen, Joey Bart, and O'Neill Cruz have been the four most consistent hitters on the team. And Adam Frazier, up until the start tonight, actually had a WRC plus of 106. Andrew McCutchen was at like 108. I mean, Ono Cruz, unfortunately injured at this point in time. We're not sure how severe, a little bit of back tightness. Don't know what's going to happen with that. But I mean, yeah, that's why Adam Frazier is being moved up to that spot. And that's the things that, like, I know that I was on this podcast probably at least like 2 weeks ago or something, looking for more run for Emmanuel Valdez, who another guy who's unfortunately hurt on the 60-day now. But you kind of have to throughout the baseball season. I know that I'm telling you to like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. But like during that, you have to be able to change up, what your thoughts are, what you're looking at, breaking the thing up into chunks and saying, okay, well, this was working for a little bit, but it's not working now. What can we see to do to change that? And I feel like that's like kind of a thing that Donnie Kelly, I will give him credit for, is recognizing, okay, Frazier's actually been hitting the ball well, getting on at like a 360 clip. I wouldn't mind moving him into that leadoff position and going with also analytics at that point in time. Because if you're facing some righties, you know, move Key down because he's been getting on base as well. Maybe if they're facing a lefty, you move Key up. So, I mean, yeah, I'm kind of maybe going with Donnie Kelly to a degree, but also going against him a little bit, but just kind of pointing out to fans that like our thoughts of like what this player is, it doesn't last for the whole season. Just like when people were envisioning Jared Jones coming back this season, they're picturing first half Jared Jones from last year.
Mhm.
There's no way that people out there that are excited about him coming back to the level that some of them are thinking, will he be the numbers that he was at the end of the season or his collective numbers? Just the same as like, oh God, Frazier. He was terrible to begin the season. So I don't even know why he's still in the lineup. Well, he's playing pretty good defense and
Yeah.
has been one of your best hitters.
And when I think of Adam Frazier, and maybe I'm, confusing him with prime Adam Frazier, but he's the kind of batter that I like to see in the leadoff spot. Can get on base, can hit the ball the other way, can give you a professional at bat, can see some pitches. Has a little bit of speed. He's not as fast as he used to be, but it's not. He's not gonna, steal a bunch of bases like O'Neal Cruz. But he's gonna be a smart base runner, move to third if the opportunity presents itself on a hit. So yeah, I'm not upset by it. I think that he's the kind of guy that has the mentality to be a place setter, especially if you're missing O'Neal Cruz and Brian Reynolds is struggling the way he is. They got him batting third last couple of games, just for what it's worth. And I know it's not the end all be all for AI, but I played a game on MLB The Show 25 against the Pirates, the computer, and they had Reynolds batting seventh. So I mean, it's not the worst idea.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, we talked about him cooling off and, basically saying that he's still not even great in the month of May, but man, I did not see him, falling below a 600 OPS, you know, going below the Mendoza line for a batting average. I mean, it's just been absolutely awful. And I know he was dealing with, the forearm at the beginning of the year and different things like that. But I mean, I don't know if that is one of these times where you just, I mean, I know you don't want to. That's like the thing of like a coach, a manager, a general manager, whoever it may be, is just basically making that tough decision of saying this guy has been one of our best hitters since he came up in 2019, but he's just really not seeing it now and moving him even further down the order, and maybe bring somebody up who is hitting a little bit hotter, somebody with maybe a little bit more power. Uh, Either Gorski, Canario, whoever it may be. Canario, I think, has been stroking the ball fairly well. So it's not saying that he is replacing Reynolds, but I mean, if another player, and that's like kind of what I'm thinking in my head, if another player who we didn't like and who wasn't held in such high esteem was having the type of streak that Reynolds was having and was hitting as poorly as he's been hitting, kind of overall, I mean, it's been ice cold, for the last, I think it's like 15, 16 games here, but just overall hasn't even been very good. Would he still even be sitting in the 3 hole?
Right, right. Yeah, Reynolds is colder than Dippin' Dots, and maybe it's one of those Clint Hurdle unplug for a series situations. That helped Kutch at one point. Just get the series off, take your mind off of the day to day, and you know just take it easy. Sit on the bench, watch the game, just distance yourself. These guys are people; they're professional athletes. Sometimes the problem is between the ears, and if he can, you know, just take a couple of days off and reset. Maybe he comes back and gets hot.
Yeah. And just to kind of go back for a second, I mean, I made some points about Donnie Kelly, and it got us into a little bit of a Frazier conversation, which definitely isn't a bad thing. But the other piece that we kind of talked about, and you even brought up at the beginning of this show, is you know Donnie Kelly's fingerprints are on this team and how it's been evolving since him and Derek Shelton stepped into Pittsburgh, and Donnie stepped back into Pittsburgh because he's a Pittsburgh boy.
Hmm.
Donnie Kelly, and I think it gets lost in a little bit of the discussion because it was around the same time that Andy Haynes was hired. So like people kind of focus on that. It's the time when, Mike Rabello became the third base coach, replacing Joey Cora, became like a little bit of the field coordinator, the position that he still holds today. And Donnie Kelly was put in charge of the infield duties and coaching at that point in time. People don't know that the bench coach is also in charge of setting the workouts, setting the drills. He's in charge of a lot of the stuff that goes on in spring training to prep these players. He is still and was the pretty much the boss, if you're looking at like the chain of command of Mike Rabello. Mendy Lopez, who is the infield coach. If you want to talk about people, like people didn't know who Radley Haddad was, I guarantee you, if you talk to, I don't know, 7 out of every 10 Pirates fans, they wouldn't even know who Mendy Lopez is. I could tell you how to point him out on a screen if anybody's looking for him. He's got a big, giant white beard and sits, in the dugout and is very well respected and had been well respected within the Pirates organization in the minor leagues. But he's their infield coach. Grabello is the field coordinator. Tarek Brock teaches the outfielders, but Mendy Lopez does the infield stuff. Radley Haddad was the run prevention, game planning, strategy specialist, whatever he was. Did pretty good with
Sure.
run prevention or, everything. Maybe didn't do too much with great with game strategy. But that's the weird thing to me is that Donnie Kelly, one of the guys who directly reported to him is gone. The guy that he directly reported to is gone. And then we're supposed to act like that. I mean, yeah, Donnie Kelly had a lot to do with what was going on with this team. Can he make the changes to make it better now? I would hope so. And I'm still hoping for that. But to say that like he had no like impact or influence on any of this, and it's just like tossing it all, it's almost like, yes, I hate Nutting, I hate Charrington, and maybe I hated Shelton, and so like Donnie Kelly is this great savior. So you can't like put anything on him for a man that's been sitting as a right hand man for 5+ years. You got to put some of that on him. And I'll put it on him right now, and then I'll move forward from it. I just had to get that off my chest a little bit, just because the praise of the Donnie ball. I were talking about before the show of doing a double steal, and it's like, well, man, that's Donnie ball, and I'm like, dude, Shelby did that earlier on in the season. Like that's something the Pirates have done from time to time. Like, yes, Donnie Kelly is, I believe, I think that even IKF said like that there's been a different energy, in the clubhouse. Well, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that Shelby knew he was a dead man walking. And if the
Yeah.
team didn't, pull itself out of a funk and they ended up just keep going deeper and deeper, I mean, he just gave in to that funk. So obviously, that's going to change, hopefully for the better. But I mean, if God forbid they go on another big losing streak, I mean, I don't think they're going to be happy just because Donnie Kelly's in the dugout. I think it's like I think we said last week, and I think I said last week, it was probably a weight lifted off of Shelton's shoulders that he could pour a bourbon and not have to wake up and go to work the next day. And I think it was a weight lifted off the player's shoulders because a guy who they had, I think, good relationships with, had respect for, had just become like kind of a shell of himself. So I feel like that was just going to be like, that's going to be the obvious first thing. Now it's going to be, okay, now we got to play the rest of the season. Okay, we got through this, almost like the first week here. But now we got to turn it on. We got to play the rest of the season.
Yeah, you would hope that there's some kind of bounce there because the players have to look themselves in the mirror and like John Wayner said on the radio for Kelly's first game, they are in large part responsible for a man losing his job. Now he's still going to get paid, and the whatever contract he had, he's going to get paid out on that. But when it comes down to it, because the players didn't perform, Shelty lost his job, and I like we keep saying that there was a point where he got the most out of these guys, teams that were worse than what they have this year, and he got more out of them. And yeah, that ran its course. And so, yeah, I would expect there to be some kind of bump that, okay, this is the guy. This is also, as the bench coach, the players got to the manager more through Donnie Kelly from what I understand. He's in charge was in charge of player communication, setting up the workouts, like you said. So he's more of the player facing guy, and Shelton is handling other things. And so yeah, it's this guy that they were closer to is now the guy. He has his shot finally to be a manager, and so those guys are going to pull for him. But yeah, the losing starts again and really rolls and has a extended period of a losing streak, then yeah, um, things are going to turn sour again, and those guys are going to fall back into their old habits, and it's going to be here we go again, and that luster is going to get lost, and it's going to be business as usual.
Yeah, and I hope that doesn't happen.
Hmm.
I really don't know what's going to happen here just because, I mean, we've talked about this the last few weeks. We should be getting players back from injury. Spencer Horowitz is getting ramped up. I think that he's coming up on in the next few days here of his 20 days of his rehab stint. So, I
Yeah.
mean, unless there would be a setback, obviously, I believe he had 3 hits tonight. So, doesn't look like there's going to be that setback. So you're going to be having him get back. Nick Gonzalez is going to be starting his rehab start soon. Um, so yeah, I mean, you're going to get those different reinforcements we talked about. I'm going to be interested to see what the corresponding moves for those will be. I mean, because there's some guys like you talk about Gorski's getting a little bit of a run. Canario's getting a little bit of a run here. Obviously, guys that can be kind of like moved up and down to a degree, um,
Hmm.
or
Bay.
maybe slip through like a Bay. I believe Canario might be out of options. I think we discussed that previously, so that's not a guy, but maybe could be slipped through. So it's going to be different, types of things that have to be happen. Obviously, I know that people's minds, especially after a rough start and now having a great start, is turned back to Bubba Chandler. And even then, like I start to think I start to like, does that mean 6 man rotation? I mean, obviously, I know that at some point in time he was going to be brought in to replace somebody. With Fulcher leaving tonight, and I think at one point in time I saw him step off a mound weird, and it was almost like Davis was going to go out to see him. So there could be injuries that crop up or little things, but then eventually, unless it's something major, that player is going to come back. And we had been talking about for I don't even know how many weeks. Well, the obvious thing is he's going to replace Carmen Majinski. And then since we mentioned that, and it was when I went to the game against the Guardians, everything that we had talked about the week before happened. He started facing the lineup the third time, was pitching poorly. This is one thing that everybody knows I always look at over his last 4 starts since that horrible game against the Guardians. And I know it's like the smallest of sample size. He has a 1.14 whip. He has the FIPS like a 4.32, which you would be looking at from you know, a fifth starter. And the ERA is a 3.26. and he went the deepest he went inning wise in a game, faced 22 batters, but also faced 22 batters in the start of that string against the Los Angeles Angels, where he pitched, not so great, went 5 innings, gave up 3 runs. But I think we even at that point in time said, well, that's like a start I would take from like a fifth starter. It's giving you a chance to win that game, keep in that game. So that's making this decision a little bit harder because, yeah, do I still think that Carmen Majinski fits better in the bullpen? I do. I still do believe that.
Yeah.
But what he's been putting together, minus the strikeouts, which is the only part he's really down, 19 and a third innings, only 12 strikeouts, but not really walking anybody, only 3 walks during that part in time, and just had one of the best starts, of his season, of his career, making those decisions a little bit more difficult, which isn't a bad thing, but it still makes those decisions a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been pretty consistent in saying that we don't think he's a bad pitcher. We just think he's better used in the bullpen. And so that's not an indictment on him as a starter, especially if you have Bubba Chandler, who's been lighting the world on fire at AAA. Bring him up. That makes your rotation stronger, your bullpen stronger. It's a win in both situations. And okay, you proved you can be, an adequate starter in the major leagues, but you're calling maybe the bullpen. And on a successful team, you need to have a strong bullpen. And you could be don't take any offense to this because I know you're a bit of a White Sox fan, but you could be the third starter in the White Sox rotation, in a historically bad year, or you could be a fifth starter on a playoff team. Like you're still contributing, just in a different way. Your niche is a little bit different. And so, do you want to be the fifth starter on a bad team? Or do you want to be, back of the bullpen arm on a good
I mean, dude, I do take a little bit of offense to that. You could have used the Rockies, sir. You could have used the
team?
Rockies. No, I'm joking. But yeah, I mean that's kind of what it comes down to, and it is good to have one of those guys in there. We talked about it at the beginning of the season. Somebody who's in that. I mean, Luis Ortiz role is what it became last year, but is just basically a swingman spot starter type of role. I mean, that definitely builds that type of stuff up. It makes it a little bit more difficult because you don't know when that swingman situation is going to come in. I feel like that would fit very well into, a Falter situation. But then we've seen Falter go 7 innings, and that swingman opportunity would be more of a setup man closer type opportunity, and that would fall away. Andrew Heaney's done it as well, but you can't predict that either because he's had some good starts as well. But I mean, when the season, I looked ahead, and when you have, I think when they're talking about like Bubba coming up and different things, it's like in the midst of like 12 games in a row and like what would that be, 15 games in like 16 days or something. You may need that 6-man rotation, and you can kind of kick that down the road, or you can just do what all the national pundits want us to do, Scott, right now, and that would be just to let Paul Skenes free and just trade him for whatever you can get, because that's going to be this massive haul. And why would you have this great player on this awful team and put him through this? And there's just so much that you could do. And man, that conversation to me, like, I don't even know where it comes from. I don't.
It comes from national media not wanting to watch the Pirates games, but wanting to watch Paul Skeens. So if you just pluck him out of Pittsburgh and put him on the Yankees, they get to watch their Yankees, and they get to see Paul Skeens. They don't have to watch the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, and the weird part to me, like, I mean, we talked this through, and I think everybody gets this, is that okay, Paul Skeens got his year last year. If he had not, won or been in first 2 spots of rookie of the year, that in a normal year before the last CBA, you know, he would be in like that Super 2 type of thing. So you get that extra year by having him sit down there. So right now he is in year 2. He is still going to be cheap next year.
Mhm.
And then the CBA is going to be renegotiated during that offseason. And if they come to an agreement, we'll play that side of it. If they come to an agreement, then in that first year of arbitration, you're going to take a little bit of a hit. Second year, if he continues to perform, if he continues to be healthy, it's going to go up. And the majority of the times, maybe before, after that first year arbitration, depending on how the team's doing, you ship him off during that off season. Or if not, a lot of times you make that trade at the trade deadline to a desperate team, or you make it when he has that last year of arbitration. But to have this conversation brought up when he is still at a league minimum for next year, you don't know what's going to happen with the CBA. And I don't know any precedents for a pitcher of this caliber. I don't think it exists of being traded with after this season 4 more years of team control. I mean, get your clicks, get your anger, get your rage bait, whatever for people. But to me, I was just tired of seeing it, and it's just very very weird. And I know that there's also probably some posturing going on by especially like a Jeff Passan who is, the concierge for the agents and stuff, trying to get that type of stuff set up going into the collective bargaining because they made some posturing even from the beginning. But yeah, I just don't even want to see it. I just want to watch Paul Skenes pitch. And the other part is I want to think of what can this roster look like? Because I'm going to be a Pirates fan for the rest of my life in 2026 and 2027 with Paul Skeens on it. When Bubba Chandler comes up, when Jared Jones hopefully comes back healthy, when you have exciting young players down in, double A, if they can make it up in those years. Like, and what this team can look like. Yeah, they didn't build around him this year to the degree that we all wanted them to, but just because that didn't happen, it doesn't automatically mean we have like these stupid trade conversations.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine a situation where they do give in to the pressure and they trade Skeens, even for a boatload of prospects. You'd have to hit with nearly all those prospects, and you're not going to get somebody who's along the same lines of Skeens. And then imagine if the unthinkable happens and a salary cap comes to Major League Baseball. That system with the increased revenue sharing and the hard cap and the hard floor, and they have an opportunity where they can at least be competitive with re-signing a player like Skeens. Maybe he wants the bright lights in the big city and he goes to New York City anyway, but it wouldn't be because the Pirates didn't have the same resources as the Yankees or Dodgers. And so they could be in the fight. And if you trade him now, you don't even have that opportunity. And that would maybe be the most Pirate thing that could happen.
I mean, Livy Dunn's on the cover of the swimsuit issue for Sports Illustrated, and her boyfriend pitches in Pittsburgh. So, I mean, I don't know if they did the big lights, and it seems like he's a pretty down to earth, calm kind of guy. But no, that's I just saying that type of stuff. It's understandable, but it makes at least I go to like almost like the Patrick Mahomes argument, and I don't need to make my feelings known on Patrick Mahomes. I probably dislike him because he's so good and he's won so many championships. But yeah, the Kansas City is not going to be able to sign Patrick Mahomes to the amount of money or the contract they signed him to if it's a baseball type system. It's just not going to be able to happen. Yeah, and so like it's just weird to have those types of discussions, and it's weird to have discussions about stuff that has happened so far in the past. And I mean, I always say that people say past is 2020 vision. I say it's like 40/20 vision. And when you see things not work out, especially like with Charrington's trades and making it seem like we had the 27 Yankees lineup to trade from for him to get prospects back. If we go back into history and we just basically keep on repeating that Spencer Horwitz had a wrist surgery and he had this chronic wrist issue when he played in 122 games in 2023 after that chronic wrist issue, 154 games last year with this chronic wrist issue. You want a chronic issue? Brian Hayes has had a chronic back issue. Like, I understand that there was an injury history with him. There was something that was happened. There was something that was constantly monitored. But I guarantee you, they're still monitoring Brian Reynolds' back every day. I guarantee you, they're still monitoring, Andrew McCutcheon's knee, his ankle, and whatever every single day. But to me, if you're going to use that argument against somebody being acquired, I understand you don't like that acquisition. You don't like what was given up for it. You don't have to make stuff up. You don't have to go overboard. Just basically say, I think they gave up too much for a guy that doesn't have much major league experience, and they went for the years of control. But to me, don't come at me with like this chronic issue that didn't affect him for the past 2 years.
especially when they consult the doctor that's been involved with that injury the entire time, and they said that the everything was fine, and this new occurrence happened. Yeah, yeah, he's had wrist issues, but didn't the doctor say that it was not connected with the other issues that he's had, and it's the same doctor that treated him before. And so, yeah, it's people being upset for whatever reason, performance, or if it's a reporter slash columnist that maybe got shut out on some sources or something. Sour grapes comes to mind in some way, shape, or form, and when you fit the facts to support just your narrative to then get more clicks, it can be difficult to listen to, difficult to read.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I get so fired up about those types of things because it's not even like the on the field stuff. And I think that's
Yeah,
where it, like, to me, it almost just gets exhausting. Is like, okay, the team has been painful enough to watch so far this season at times. Like, I don't need it in when I'm trying to go and search for information or I'm trying to actually have conversations when the comeback is, well, if Charrington didn't go get a guy with a chronic wrist issue, like, say it another time. Or, we didn't get enough for Adam Frazier and Josh Bell and Starling Marte. Go back and look at their numbers.
yeah,
Most of them were coming off of not so great seasons. I mean, Josh Bell was probably traded at the lowest point of his career. A lot of people after that 2020 season, I mean, who wouldn't have been? But then also, like, to me, it's just very, very weird how at this point in time, yes, there's a lot of things that he has done wrong, but don't act like I said, like you were trading the 27 Yankees to get players back.
yeah,
You traded Adam Frazier at the highest point in his career, and you got back, I think, the best that you could get back for him at that point in time because everybody knew who Adam Frazier was and had a hot start to the first half of the season.
yeah. And you also have to look and see where they were in the rebuild. And when they traded those guys, they were trying to fill the farm system at the lowest levels and getting some quantity with some quality. And across the board, the things that I read were pretty strong endorsements of the trades. But you don't know when you go get a Piguero, who was as young as he was and as far away from the majors. You just don't have that crystal ball. We're still waiting for Hudson Head to be the headliner of a trade, you know, and then you get a guy like Bednar who, you know, he was more of a sure thing. He ended up performing better, I think, than a lot of people thought, but he was also had major league time at the time that he was picked up. So when you're getting those guys at the lower levels, it's more of a crapshoot, and the percentages for winning those kind of trades, you know, they're not very good. And that's one of the things that we always said about Huntington, that he took the higher floor, maybe lower ceiling guys that were closer to the major league level, and so that was disappointing. Like, oh, you got to call in Moran, you know, among other guys for Garrett Cole, but at the same time, you're not going and getting the high ceiling guys that also have a little bit of a lower floor, and so it was more of a gamble, more of roll the dice with those kind of trades, and they haven't hit at the level that we wanted them to. But that isn't necessarily. And then you want to compare it to like a Spencer Horwitz who had major league time. You know, you're looking at different things, so you'll have to see how the Horwitz thing plays out because there are different stages in the rebuild. And yeah, it could have been better with those initial trades. You know, Will Crow could have maybe performed better and made the Josh Bell trade look better. Um, but yeah, they were in different spots, and it's so hard to project. We're seeing guys that are on the major league roster. Look at a guy like Henry Davis, who tears the cover off the ball at AAA, and one level up, he struggles and he pops up everything that he swings at. But try to project that out 4 years when you go get a guy at low or high A and think where is he going to be when he comes to the major leagues. It it's not, and unless your development, I think development has, if anything, development needs to be the issue. We need to talk about taking these guys in. What are the Rays doing? What are the Guardians doing to take everybody that? What do the Cardinals do to everybody that they take in off the street performs above expectations? Where is that? It's not. They. I think they can identify talent fine. They can pick out these diamonds in the rough, but can you polish them up and get them to the major leagues so they can contribute?
Yeah, and that's where I've been like almost this entire time of Ben Charrington's tenure is the development is yeah, I mean I don't know how you can knock like what they got back for a player. I mean, and especially like I don't know if a guy goes and succeeds someplace else, then you can kind of point to that. But there's even been guys that Ben Charrington's acquired, they've tried to develop that have gone other places and haven't done well there either. But to me, that's more of the point to go at is I mean, you picked up. We've talked about Henry Davis. You mentioned him again as a guy. Wasn't the consensus 1-1 because there wasn't a 1-1 in that year, but there wasn't anybody out there saying that was a bad pick.
Right.
It was like you got the most, probably mature college bat, the best college bat in that draft. So, probably a good pick. Nick Gonzalez, unfortunately, there's been some injuries throughout his minors and now majors that have kind of hindered that. But even at that, it was like, the Pirates made a good pick. It was a advanced college bat. So they're getting that going. So, yes, I mean, more to me on the development side of things, not so much on the bad trade or coming up with things. And just like one more thing on Horowitz, I know that we're going a little bit longer than we usually do, but I mean they're like, well, you picked up this guy who like who was he blocked by and what did all this kind of stuff, and he's so old and all this kind of other stuff. I'm like, well, do you see the guy just got paid over $500 million for the Blue Jays? That's who he was blocked by, but he was
Yes.
playing so good last year that they chose to play him out of position at second base because he's a better first baseman to actually still get his bat in the lineup. So that's my thing is like, I don't care that like if you don't like Charrington, you don't like Nutting, you didn't like Shelton, and there are like legitimate reasons to come up with, like we're talking about, with like they haven't been able to develop a hitter. I think they've been able to identify hitters. I mean, I still think that Jack Sawinski is a hitter that they identified because a guy that comes in and hits 18 home runs when he's absolutely struggling in the majors, hits 25 home runs and becomes what could be like a fourth outfielder or one of, three of your starting outfielders who's maybe not as strong as hopefully the other two, but is a Major League Baseball player struggling right now. But I think they identified a hitter. I honestly think they did. It's more towards development. So don't go to like oh, he made bad trades. But then I also look at the guys he made trades with. We're not making trades, and I think I had a full episode at one point in time before you were on, Scott, of the people that the Reds had to trade when they were trading. The Guardians have had to trade. Shane Bieber. We've never traded a Shane Bieber to get somebody back. Different things like that.
Luis
So
Castillo.
Luis Castillo. I mean, start naming these guys. Like we haven't had those guys to trade. So, I mean, I guess my thing in the end, in this long-winded rant and kind of craziness, is that yeah, there's a lot of things to blame a lot of the Pirates management, upper management for, but man, you just don't got to make up stuff to do it.